Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and it is that time again. The 7-year anniversary Tier 3 Selector has been announced with all 20 Tier 3s available, some old, some new, lots reworked. So it's time to rank these characters and give you the best possible advice for your Tier 3 Selector, because that's what's on everyone's mind. Everyone's asking this question: who should I Tier 3? Who should I upgrade, etc.? I'm here to do as much help as I can. So we're going to do a brand new structure this time around, rather than just going through the characters one by one and giving you my ranking from lowest to highest or from the bottom to the top. We're going to be using our good friend Tier Maker, and we're going to start, of course, at the bottom with this one and work our way up. And I will explain everything, and we will talk about the parameters as we're going through. So the first one here is called Squad Battle. This is a spot reserved for the lowliest, saddest, most rework-needing characters in Marvel Future Fight, and of course, none other than Ant-Man finds his way in the Squad Battle ranking. Now, just so you know, I'm assuming, and so that's why I'm using their icons, that you have the newest uniform for each of these characters. So, for example, if you were to regularly Tier 3 Spider-Man and use the Selector on Spider-Man without getting his No Way Home uniform, he's not going to perform very well for you, and you're going to be disappointed. Whether you have Far From Home, whether you have Infinity War Spider-Man with the Iron Spider arms thing, it's just not going to work. Likewise, if you have like the old Hulk uniform, you're going to say, oh, this is so sad. He grabs the helicopter, he doesn't do any damage. So keep in mind that you're going to need the newest uniform, the uniform in the icons that I'm using for these characters, in order for them to perform at the level that I'm referring to them at, which was going to be, obviously higher than Ant-Man from this tier up, because sadly he's the only one. For those of you that don't remember the squad battle joke, at this point in time, the only reason why you should Tier 3 Ant-Man is to get more points for your squad battle score. That is the only value Ant-Man has, and I guess for story mode auto nowadays, that's the only other one. Up next, we have the support tier, and this tier is basically for characters who are not really going to bring much to your roster on their own, but they're going to be excellent supports. Now, there are other characters here that don't fit the support category that could also be supports. Like, for example, just a spoiler alert here, Black Bolt is ranked higher than the support tier. However, you could use Black Bolt as an excellent leadership for other Inhumans like Medusa. However, that's not how I'm going to rank him specifically. Specifically for support today, I'm going to be ranking Cyclops and Storm. So the way that you can read this, because we have 20 Tier 3s, you can essentially read this as Ant-Man is ranked 20th. He's right at the bottom of the barrel. And then Storm is 19th, and then Cyclops is 18th. So we're going sort of up from there, and the leftmost character is the highest in this bracket. So in this case, I'm ranking Cyclops a little bit ahead of Storm, because Storm does do more damage on her own, and she has the elemental passive, which applies to all allies. It's maybe a little bit more flexible, maybe a little bit more restrictive, but Cyclops has both the leadership and the energy attack passive. And unlike Storm, Cyclops' passive is much better even if he doesn't have a uniform. So he's one of the few characters on this list that you could actually still get away with not using the uniform for, or not buying the uniform for, and he could still be pretty usable. I think Storm only gives increased lightning damage with her base kit and her first uniform, which is much worse, and basically only applies to, a very short list of characters. I guess you could Tier 3 Storm if you're getting hype and getting ready for Thor Love and Thunder and you want as many elemental supports as possible. But outside of that, at this point, Storm is too slow and too fragile for most of the, harder hitting contents. Now that we are in the next tier, we are moving on to average. Here is where you're going to start to see a much better return on your Tier 3 Selector investment. You're still not going to get to the upper echelons of value here, B, A, and S, which I will obviously rename, but the average tier is where things start to sort of, balance out, normalize, and you can see more people choosing these characters, or these are the characters that you'd sort of have left over after choosing everyone else for different reasons, besides Ant-Man. So we're going to start off with Hulk here, mainly for PvP. With this uniform, he's fallen off in PvP quite a bit since he was introduced almost 2 years ago. That's right, this uniform's almost 2 years old now. Crazy how time flies. But yeah, he hasn't really kept up, because as we know, 6 months is really the lifespan for a character in PvP. 1 year tops if they're very strong and very lucky. Next up, we have Captain Marvel with the villain Last Avenger uniform. You could argue that she should be a little bit ahead of Hulk, and I would say it's fine to put her a little bit ahead because what she can do for you is give you a great leadership. She can also give you a nice support with the co-op button for Moonstone specifically Moonstone. And then she can also give you some pretty decent point value in squad battle if that's your thing. But again, if we're comparing characters for squad battle, what are we doing in the first place? That game mode is rusty. After Hulk, we also have Black Bolt here. Much better in PvE than Hulk, but really not going to move the needle or the meter much for you. A bit of a wonky rotation, but at the same time, his kit kind of holds up over time because he has the heal and he has ignore dodge and things like that that are still quite valuable. After him, we have Winter Soldier. I was not really impressed with his rework for Disney Plus. He's basically been the only bad Disney Plus character that we've gotten since the shows were released and since the updates were released. I feel kind of bad for him because even more so nowadays, he's overshadowed and eclipsed by so many good speed types, right? Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, even Echo is making this guy look kind of obsolete. So I do feel bad for Bucky, for the Buckster, but that's really where his ranking goes. I mean, I guess for purely PvE content, you could probably say he's a little bit ahead of Black Bolt. Also, he has a more flexible leadership, just, 30% physical attack to all allies versus Black Bolt's only to the Inhumans. But also keep in mind that you'd need their newest uniforms anyways, but you actually don't need Bucky's uniform if you just want to use him as a lead. So that is some value there. After Black Bolt or Winter Soldier, depending on your personal ranking, but it's not really too much of a difference, we have Black Widow. And like Hulk, very, very good for PvP 2 years ago. Nowadays, not so much. And outside of that, she's going to just be outpaced by much better speed types, so her value is pretty limited. But all characters have value now because of squad battle and auto, not ABX, auto story mode. And then last but not least, in the average tier, we have Black Panther. And again, this rework should have been better. It definitely should have been better. And again, in terms of pure PvE potential, he's probably better than Black Widow, maybe even better than Black Bolt. But we're really, you're splitting hairs here. You're not going to see a tremendous difference in value. All of these characters are roughly the same in terms of where they're going to get you, except Hulk, of course, but he's far and away the best for PvP, besides maybe Captain Marvel. So yeah, this tier, again, is still going to probably leave you disappointed. You're going to need to put a lot of investment into these characters to see any kind of return. And so keep in mind, you generally only want to touch these characters after you've been sure you've tier 3'd all the upcoming characters, and there are still a lot to choose from, so that's why we're going to be moving on to the next tier, which is called, aptly named, Quite Nice. It's quite nice if you were to tier 3 any of these characters because they're solid characters. They're better than the average characters. They're going to do more for you. They're going to last longer. They were tier 3'd more recently, like they were upgraded more recently, or their kits are just better suited to withstand the sort of erosion of time and the power creep of general characters. And so we'll start off with one of the most popular characters in Marvel history nowadays, Iron Man, aka Superior Iron Man. Awesome rework for him last year. It's now a year old, so it's starting to show some of its rust, but still good, and especially good when you get the boss under 30% HP, I believe, because he just does berserk damage. His damage goes up by 200%, and it's super satisfying to see the bars just start melting off. Not too much value outside of PvE, bit of a hard rotation for a regular proc, not a rage, but otherwise a very solid character. After Iron Man, we have Daredevil here. Daredevil, as I showed you guys about a month ago or 3 weeks ago in a video, can still hold his own in PvP despite stronger speed types, stronger combat types, stronger blast types, etc. He's a little bit slower now, a little bit squishier now with the damage numbers coming out higher and higher, but he can still put in some work for you in PvP, and he's still not bad. He's still pretty solid for PvE with the crazy AoE, the -60 all defense down, and the clutch damage for things like Dispatch. People kind of sleep on Daredevil for Dispatch, but he's still pretty good. Up next after that, a little bit higher, is Venom. Still one of the best options for ABX if you don't have the Wolverine investment, or you just don't like playing with Captain America with the Judgment uniform, the Phoenix Force, enter the Phoenix tournament type of thing. But yeah, Venom's pretty solid, good damage, always been a great striker, but you don't need him at tier 3 for that. Keep that in mind. And I just really like the character personally, so maybe I'm a little biased putting him a little bit higher than he should be. After Venom, we have another enemy of Null. This is Thor, Herald Thor. Now, this one's tricky. I will give you guys the heads up here. I am putting him in the quite nice tier, just to round out the quite nice tier before we keep going, so that you guys know. I'm putting Vision ahead of Thor. He does a little bit more damage. He has a little bit better survivability, etc. And he's better for PvP. He's the second best PvP character in this ranking besides Daredevil. But what I want to point out specifically for Thor that you have to keep in mind and be careful of is that Love and Thunder is coming out this year. It may end up being delayed. It's on schedule right now for like July 8th, which is very, very soon. But I would say you could tier 3 him in anticipation of the movie. That's a great option. That's a great idea. But I would not recommend getting his uniform. I know I said at the beginning of the video, you should have all of these characters' uniforms. Not Thor. Not Thor. Just because of the timing, it's just too risky and it's not a very good idea. So keep that in mind. Then we move on to the second best tier. This is the very, very good tier, the excellent tier, whatever you want to call it. These characters are going to serve you super duper well, and they're just really powerful. They're still pretty meta, I would say. They're not top of the meta, that's reserved for the last tier, but they're still very, very good. And we're going to start ourselves off with Ghost Rider, basically the only character on this tier list without a heal. And that says a lot, because he can still pump out insane damage in PvE content, has some of the coolest animations, and he still has #1 squad battle scores locked down for Vibranium Universal Human Hero. He absolutely crushes it. I'm really, really happy with this rework. I know I said 2-year-old reworks are sort of losing their luster, but Ghost Rider just keeps on trucking because of that insane passive with 120% increased damage to villains. After Ghost Rider, we have Rogue. And you could argue that Rogue could be higher. Again, she has basically all the same markings of Ghost Rider. Amazing PvE value, really good for squad battle, best basically for the mutant hero category. Sorry, Deadpool. But the thing with Rogue is that she absolutely needs a very specific build. Not only do you have to tier 3 her, not only do you have to get her uniform, but you also need to give her a Judgment CTP. Without a Judgment CTP, she's going to struggle. Some people say they can get away with decent value on her using a lightning damage proc obelisk, but I think it's risky and I don't want to recommend it to you because I haven't personally tested it myself, so I don't know how difficult or easy it is. So I would say that's sort of the only buyer beware issue. If you're going to tier 3 Rogue, you have to know that that value isn't going to be fully unlocked until you can get her a CTP of Judgment, which does hurt her value in my opinion a little bit. And then we finish it off with Captain America with his new Phoenix uniform. One of the best characters so far basically the best character that I've shown thus far. That's why he's here, but just so clutch. He's got healing, he's got damage reduction, he's got like really cool animations. He's very easy to play, he's proc friendly, all these really good things. Not super proc friendly, but you can still make it work. He is still semi proc friendly, much more so than a lot of the other characters on this list, especially his colleagues next to him, Rogue and Ghost Rider, are not proc friendly at all. So yeah, thus far, we've calculated 17 tier 3s, and we've ranked them from the 4th place all the way down to the lowliest 20th place. Now it's ready for the top 3, baby. Here we go. This is the insane value, seriously tier. And basically, if you tier 3 any one of these characters and you haven't already, like you don't already have them, you're going to be like, wow, I was playing Marvel Future Fight without these characters? What is going on? Obviously, our resident god, Sharon Rogers, has basically been good since the beginning of time. I really cannot remember a time before her introduction where she wasn't one of the best characters in the game. That's basically how it is for PvE. She can be hard to understand how to play at first. I know it took me years, but once you get it down, her damage is almost unbeatable. It's absolutely absurd. And then we have Loki. I'm using the TVA uniform, but you can absolutely use the President Loki uniform, so you have flexibility there. And he's one of the best tier 3s in the game for PvE content. He just absolutely crushes everything. ABX, World Boss, everything. Squad Battle, the whole shebang. He's the king of Dispatch. He's the king of Dimension Rifts. He honestly might have the most value in the game if it wasn't for Spider-Man, #1. No surprise here, guys. When I ranked the 800 CCF tier 3s, I said the same thing. We have a new king, and his name is Peter Parker. Just insane value. The red uniform is probably the one you want to go with overall for the most value if you're really trying to squeeze every last dropout, because this is going to give you a top 5 PvP character with the right build, and a very competitive, like top 10, or you should probably say top 5 speed type for PvE content. He's really that strong, and he's basically the closest thing we have to something like Jean Grey 3 or 4 years ago, where he's basically good for all content, and I can't really think of a game mode that you throw him into that he's not going to perform at least pretty well in, if not dominate. So yeah, I honestly considered having Spider-Man in a tier by himself and dropping Loki and Sharon down, but it didn't really make sense given the rest of the layout. So this is what it's going to be. But just keep in mind, like, I think Loki's closer to Spider-Man than the rest of them, but after Loki and Spider-Man, there's a pretty big drop down to Sharon. Sharon's still really good. It's not really about how she's not good. It's about how insanely good both Loki and Spider-Man are. Their value is just like, it's really hard to calculate just how valuable they are for your roster. It's bonkers. They are going to serve you well for at least the next year, if not longer, regardless of what power creep comes out. So yeah, there's the ranking. Spider-Man number 1 all the way down to Ant-Man number 20. Perfectly balanced with the insects, as all things should be. This is the 7-year anniversary tier 3 selector ranking. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Share the guide, smash the like button. It helps the channel out, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.